everyone, welcome to our third and final video about the animal kingdom. Here we will learn about the most complex of the animals, and that will eventually end with placental mammals, which are the very most complex of all of the animal kingdom. So let's get started. We have amphibians. So we're now moving from fish to amphibians, and amphibians are quite a bit more complex than fish. You can see one big difference is that they do have legs and they can come up on land. So these are some examples of amphibians. We got a salamander, toad, frogs. These animals have bilateral symmetry. Their young ones are herbivores, but usually the adults are carnivores, like our toad in the classroom does actually eat crickets, so he's a carnivore. Their young have gills, and the adults usually have lungs, and they do some respiration through their skin, but mostly through, if they're young, they're through their gills, and adults through their lungs. They have a closed circulatory system, which is fairly complex, and they do have kidneys for their excretion or getting rid of waste. They have cephalization and well-developed body system or nervous system for them to be able to sense the world around them and respond to it. Their movement, well, they're motile. The young ones can swim, and the adults can also swim in most cases, but they can also walk or jump. They do sexual reproductions, and they have amniotic eggs, but their eggs do not have shells. They do not have amniotic eggs. They have kind of a simple egg that has to be in the water, and their eggs do not have shells, so their eggs have to be in the water. An example is the Australian green tree frog, and an interesting fact is that they can live outside of water, but they do depend on water for reproduction. Reptiles are here. This includes alligators, crocodiles, tortoises, snakes, Komodo dragons, and other lizards like chameleons. Reptiles have bilateral symmetry. They are herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. They do respiration through their lungs, and they can have a closed circulatory system. Their excretion tends to be through their kidneys, and their response or nervous system, they have cephalization and many senses. A lot of them have strong vision. Motile organisms here in the reptile category, they can walk or slither or even swim. They reproduce sexually, and these are the first ones to have an amniotic egg that has a shell. So that means that they do not rely on water to reproduce, and that's a big advancement for organisms. They can move further inland then. So an example is a black mamba, which is a type of snake, and you can see the scientific name there. And a fun fact is that reptiles have dry, scaly skin that allows them to move away from water, so they can move inland. Next up, we have birds. There are many different types of birds. Most of them fly. Some of them don't, like ostriches and penguins don't fly, but these other examples like hummingbirds and macaws and eagles and toucans, they can fly. So many different types of birds. Birds have bilateral symmetry. They can be all different types of heterotrophs. They have developed digestive systems, very well developed digestive systems. They use lungs for their respiration, and they have closed circulatory systems. Their excretion is done through kidneys and through an opening that they have called a cloaca. Actually, reptiles and birds both have cloacas, and cloacas are a hole, I guess you could say, that does excretion and also reproduction and the end of their digestive system. So essentially through the cloaca, they can poop, pee, and reproduce. Kind of interesting. Their response or nervous system is that they're cephalized. They have cephalization, and they actually have a well-developed nervous system. And they are motile. They can swim like penguins. They can fly, or they could walk like ostriches, even run. They reproduce sexually through their cloaca. And an example is a common ostrich. You can see the scientific name there too. And an interesting fact is that some birds like ostriches and penguins never ever fly. Next up, we have monotremes. Monotremes are really unique mammals. So we're going to talk about three types of mammals. We're going to talk about monotremes, placental mammals, and our marsupials. But these are the first type, monotremes. And these include things like platypus, which for a while it's such a unique type of organism that for a while people didn't even know if it was real. But they are true and real. They have bills and they also have fur. So monotremes have bilateral symmetry, and they are all carnivores. They breathe through lungs, and they have a closed circulatory system. They do excretion through kidneys, and they also, just like the reptiles and the birds, have a cloaca. for their excretion and also for their reproduction. Their response or nervous system is that they have cephalization and a well-developed nervous system. And the monotremes are motile. They mostly walk or swim. They do sexual reproduction through their cloaca, and these are mammals that lay eggs. So the only types of mammals that lay eggs, like hard shell eggs, are monotremes. An example is the duckbill platypus. And a fun fact is there are only 3 species of monotremes left in the world, and they are in Australia. Next up, we have marsupials. Marsupials include koalas, wombats, kangaroos, and possums. Possums are actually the only marsupial that lives in North America. So marsupials have bilateral symmetry, and they're herbivores, omnivores, or carnivores. They have lungs to do respiration and a closed circulatory system. They do excretion through their kidneys and a urinary tract system. They have cephalization and a very advanced nervous system. They are motile. Many of them can climb, walk, and or jump. They reproduce sexually, and the unique thing about marsupials is that with their sexual reproduction, their young are born, I would say almost like very prematurely. And then they crawl into a pouch that is external, and the young develop within a pouch. So the young are born very undeveloped, and then they grow and develop inside of their mother's pouch. So, for example, if you ever hit a possum on the road, you might want to check to see if it is a female possum and if she was carrying young in her pouch. If that's the case, you could call a nature wildlife center that could help her or help the babies if she's no longer alive. A common example is the common wombat, and you can see the scientific name there. And an interesting fact is that the only native North American marsupial is the possum. Our last group is placental mammals. These include the most complex organisms of the animal kingdom. This includes everything from dolphins to hamsters to elephants to tigers and giraffes and chimpanzees, and actually even humans are placental mammals. So placental mammals have bilateral symmetry, and they can be all different types of heterotrophs. They breathe through lungs, and they have closed circulatory systems. They do excretion through kidneys, and they have a highly developed system of their nervous system with cephalization, very complex brains, plenty of ability to sense the world around them. They are motile, and they do all sorts of movements: flying, swimming, crawling, walking, jumping. Reproduction is sexual, and the offspring develops completely in the mother, internally inside of the mother. The mother, in other words, is pregnant, and there is a placenta which helps provide the offspring with nutrients as it develops. An example is human beings, or Homo sapiens, and a fun fact is that mammals are warm-blooded, which helps them live in many environments. And that's actually true of the placental mammals and the marsupials and the monotremes. So thank you so much for listening to all of these videos about animals. I hope you've learned a bit and maybe reviewed some information that you already knew, but thanks for listening.